There. Somehow I ended the recording. The first section is called, the first type is called mitzvah. Hasheni, nizhar, that from which you have to be careful of. Hashlishi, nim'as, that which you have to be disgusted by. Haravi'i, ahuv, and the fourth one is beloved. Hachamishi, mutar, and the fifth category is permissible. What does that mean? Harishon nikra mitzvah, this first category that he calls mitzvah, hu hadibur b'torah u'tfilah. Okay, that should be obvious. That when the type of speech that's mitzvah, says the Rambam, we're talking about davening, we're talking about learning Torah. Sheni nikra nizhar, the second category he calls be aware or be warned of. That's hadibur sheyesh lizaher bahem. Those are the kind of things you have to be careful of. V'lo ledaber bahem, and not to speak them. Kegon lashon hara, like being careful not to speak lashon hara. V'ashlishi nim'as, and the third category, be disgusted by. Just like chatter, idle chatter. It's called to be disgusted by. Instead of speaking about Torah, it's just like a waste of time. That's known as a idle chatter, words of the Chachamim. What is the category of speech that is beloved? Divrei musar. When you talk about self-improvement, when you learn about self-improvement, that's beloved. Because someone who learns these things and speaks in these things is beloved by God. The fifth one is mutar, is permissible. These are things that you need to talk about in life. Like business, things in your house, things outside your house. Vasug zeh chamishi, says the Rambam, is this category, the Rambam says, that shalol habot behem ela b'achreach. You shouldn't speak too much. You should be as quiet as possible. What does he mean? We've seen this before, that he talks about this, that we need to talk about certain things in life. We're human beings. We have topics we have to discuss, and sometimes they can be very long topics. But also have to be careful in minimizing the talking, for sure, not idle chatter, guilty. And also even things that we're supposed to talk about and be involved in, we have to be careful sometimes, just as they would say, zip it. But when it comes to Torah, that's not the case, because you want to be involved in Torah. You want to talk. You don't want to talk shtuyot, but you want to be involved in Torah. You want to be speaking Torah. But why is it tov for the goof? He says, Lo matzati tov leguf ela shtika. I found the best thing for my body is silence. We have two parts. We know that the guf and the neshama, the physical body, and we have the spiritual part of ourselves known as the soul. We have to, as believing Jews, as practicing Jews, we have to be careful in what we do in our lives. So the morning we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, our lives are guided by Torah, by Shulchan Aruch, by mitzvot, by halachot, by musar, right? All kinds of things. And if we just allow things to just go with the flow, whatever we want, that's obviously very problematic. And therefore, we have to let us say, we have to kind of, I don't know how you say that, kind of pull back and make sure that we are careful in what we do to preserve our physical health, which helps our spiritual health. Our spiritual health, which helps our physical health. And the best place to start is with our words, with our speech. We could spend all day long talking and have actually accomplished nothing. We could spend 5 minutes talking and accomplish tremendous amount. We have to be understand what it says in Kohelet, where it says et lachashot ve'et ledaber. There's a time to be silent and a time to speak. Well, didn't he just say, wait, I never found anything better than silence. Yes, but not in every single place. Because you can't say something to someone, there are times you have to speak up. And right now I say this is a very good time. It's a very good time because we are getting the hasbara around the world about what's going on in Israel is horrible, right? It's like Israel's doing a better job now than it ever did before, and now they put Elon Levy on the side for some reason. But we are all ambassadors. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, he's the British spokesman, the government, who's done amazing things. Eyebrow guy, yes. And he's been sidelined for now because he had a little run-in with David Cameron in the UK because Elon spoke the truth. I don't know, kind of silly. But in any case, so we all have, whether you have Facebook or you have any other kind of friends from the old country that you may be in communication with. It's part of our job. This is not a time to be silent. This is a time. This is not et lachashot. This is et ledaber. But if you don't know what to say, you don't have what to say, better to be quiet, because you could make things possibly even worse. Now we also get this idea. I'm going to take my phone out again. We also get this idea of the concept of silence having a very different effect on us. It says in many places, and I think we talked about this when we were doing Sharim, that there's this idea that if someone hears himself being insulted, and you just you don't give back, you just take it and you move on with life, then Hashem uses the merit of your silence at that moment that helps you tremendously. So I'm going to tell you, it says where we get that from. So there's a pasuk, we know, Micha mocha ba'elim Hashem, Mika mocha nadar ba'kodesh. It says, who is great like you, God. So the word in Tefillah, we talked about this a few weeks back. Ba'elim is spelled Aleph Lamed Yud Mem, and the Kli Yakar says as follows. The Gemara in Gitin says, Darshu, Micha mocha be'ilmi, who is great like you among the silent. Elem is silent, so the mute. So first the Kli Yakar is bothered by, what do you mean? How do you just change a word like that? Who's great like you? Because the word Micha mocha ba'elim means who is great like you in power, among the powers. The word el means power. So how does suddenly make a drasha and add a letter mem, the ilmim, among the mute? He goes and explains. Anyone who hears himself being insulted, and he holds back, he doesn't say anything. He's quiet and he overcomes his anger, his inclination to become angry. He's considered strong. As the Mishne will get to. We did, I don't remember anymore. Who is considered strong, one who overcomes his Yetzer Hara. So too, when God hears himself being insulted, he forces himself to be quiet, again anthropomorphically. This is the representation of God's strong hand. What does this mean in normal English? We know that the Gemara tells us in multiple places the concept mahu afata. Just like God is X, so too we should be X. Just like Hashem visits the sick, we visit the sick. Just like God clothes the ones who don't have clothing, we have to clothe the ones who don't have. This is another thing that could be in that same category. When Hashem himself can hear his insult from humanity, and he's quiet and doesn't do something about it, no matter what the context, obviously we don't know what's going on. And that's a positive thing. So too, when we are being insulted. Now, that does not mean, the Rambam is very clear on this. Rambam says that we're not supposed to be completely adish. That's another word I don't remember in English. Apathetic, thank you. I brought my Milonit. To be apathetic, okay, someone's just yelling and screaming at us like, oh, okay, whatever. No, you have to stand up for yourself. There are certain situations where a person should just be silent, and it's actually much better, and it also will end the conversation. It'll often end the conversation, and sometimes it's worse for the person who's insulting you to not get any response out of you. Makes them, like, it's like, okay, just walk away from it, and it's always better. It almost always is better to not get into confrontation. But I know there are people who hate confrontation, and there are people who don't mind it. So if you hate confrontation, it is easier for you to just kind of walk away. The people who like confrontation may have an inclination like just to get that last word in, but try to overcome it. So on the one hand, we have to be careful of not saying things when they shouldn't be said. Another thing we have to make sure we have to say when they should be said. There is also another thing, and I'm going to tie this into today also in a moment, something called a Ta'anit Dibur. Ta'anit Dibur means a fast day of speech. So I guess the day before you eat, you speak as much as you can, so you don't have to use up too many words. That's not what it means at all. You get at 4 a.m, say having coffee, just talk for 15 minutes, and then go back to sleep. So there was a man who's named Rabbi Yitzchak Alfaya. I think that's how it's pronounced. He passed away in 1955 here in Israel. And he's the one who seems to have made this idea popular. It already existed for generations, but to make it popular, what is it? It's exactly what it sounds like. You don't speak except for things that have to do with Torah or davening. So, for example, or brachot. So, for example, and I know people who do this. I know someone who actually does it every Erev Rosh Hashanah, which is pretty cool. There are people who do it on Mondays and Thursdays. People who do it the whole month of Elul, which is amazing. I could do that.
So if you don't feel well, you can say like,
You don't talk. You don't talk. No, it's what you do talk is you talk. You can say daven, you can say brachot. And what's the purpose of that? Is we speak very often without even thinking, right? So, and it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Just there are things we say we shouldn't say, there are things we should have said and we didn't say, all kinds of. It makes us hyper focused on for one day or part of a day on our speech. It does. It trains your mind to do something that is so unnatural because we are ruach memala, we are speaking beings. That's what we are. That's what that separates us from the animal kingdom. So from the animal world. So that the idea of a tanit dibur, I've never personally tried it. But it is something that sounds that from people who have done it, I've spoken to them, sounds like it's besides being challenging, it's also really refreshing and like to really focus on the use of your speech for the day. And I did see a comment that said that it's terrible for one reason, because the fact that a person is doing a tanit dibur causes other people to almost have to speak 2 or 3 times as much. Because they say, did you want milk? Is that a yes or no? I don't understand you. Is that a yes or no? So all of a sudden the other person is speaking 10 times more. So I've seen the downside of that as well. I'll leave it to you to make your own decision. Now, how does that have to do with today also? By the way, today, which is not the 13th of Adar, it's the 11th, but on the actual date of Tanit Esther, the 13th, which will fall on Shabbat, is the yahrzeit of Moshe Feinstein Zatzal. I think it was always special to me to know that he passed away on a day where Bnei Israel are fasting on his yahrzeit, but obviously it doesn't coincide this year. But in any event, today is Tanit Esther. And the source for this idea says as follows. Vatomer Esther lahashiv el Mordechai. And Esther sends a message to Mordechai. Lech kenosin, for those of you who are aware that there's a poster right now, I mentioned it last night also in the history class, today at 5:30 Israel time around the world. There's this global Shema Yisrael, 4:30 to 5:30 at the Kotel is a gathering of people. And the poster says, Lech kenoset kol hayudim, go and gather all the people. Go and gather all the people, Jews, hanimtzim b'Shushan, that are found in the city of Shushan, v'tzumu alai, and fast for me. Because remember, she's going to be going to the king to plead her case, and she can't go if he doesn't call her. V'tzumu alai v'al tochlu v'al tishtu shloshet yamim, don't eat or drink for 3 days, laila v'yom, day and night, or night and day. Gam ani v'na'arotai atzum kein, so I and my ladies will also fast. And then I will be able to go to the king, which will be unlawful because I haven't been called. And if I die, I die. Or if I perish, I perish. That pasuk. There are multiple turning points in the story of Esther. Multiple. One of which I'm not going to mention now because I'm going to use it hopefully in the talk one day. Okay, so I don't want to play my hand because I love this line I heard. But anyways, but this is one of the turning points. What is the turning point here with this particular pasuk? You could say, okay, the Yeshuas of starting the salvation begins. This is not. Until now, everything is happening to Esther. She's told what to do, where to walk, what to wear, how to talk, to be quiet, not to be quiet, to talk, to keep this a secret. She's being told what to do, everything. And everything's happening, is going downhill. The edict has gone out. Mordechai is putting on sackcloth. He says all these terrible things. And what happens? She takes the bull by the horns and she starts making decisions. Tell Mordechai this, do this, get your act together. One thing after another. This is the turning point because Esther finds her voice. As soon as Esther finds her voice, she becomes the heroine of the entire story of Megillat Esther, and the Jews are saved. This is part of the point what I want to make today, is that there are times to be quiet. That's exactly what the Mishne said. But don't ever go ahead and say, oh, I learned a Mishnah in Pirke Avot that said, oh, we should be quiet. Better thing to be quiet. Matter of fact, there's a Mishnah coming up later. It says, Siag lechochma shtika. That a way to protect yourself from things, which we'll talk about one day, is silence. Once in a while, I'll hear somebody say something, whether in my house, outside the house, and I'll mumble under my breath. Siag lechochma shtika. That's all I say. Say it, it's like, okay, just shut up. Don't say anything. So there are times to be silent. But if Esther had not found her voice, who knows what would have happened? We don't know, right? Could have come to mother. And matter of fact, Mordechai himself says it to her. He says, Umi odea im le'et kazoti gat lamalchut. Who knows if this is the whole reason you became queen? Mordechai and Esther didn't have the benefit of knowing the story, right? We don't know how this war is going to end or when it's going to end. We didn't, in 1967, June of 67, people would say, oh, don't worry, it's only going to be 6 days, right? We got this, no, right? They didn't know what was going to happen. So as things start to unfold, Mordechai is kind of thinking out loud with Esther and saying, maybe this is the whole reason, that Vashti's dead, and all of a sudden, like, who would have thought that you, of all the people, you're going to end up some Jewess is going to become in the palace of the king? So therefore, part of Tanit Esther it's not just a fast day. By the way, it's the lowest level fast day, and the proof of that is, and it's not a sad day, and it's not a mourning day. The proof of that is that why is it when Tisha B'Av falls on Shabbat, we push it off a day forward? It's called Nidche. Why is it when Shiva Sabbat Tammuz falls on Shabbat, it's pushed off a day? Why don't do it just a day earlier? Do it on Thursday or something like we did this. Because you don't want to bring Pur Anut or bad things and make them come sooner. Because it's represented destruction Beit HaMikdash, it represents the what's it called? The breach in the wall, the protective wall in Yerushalayim. So we don't want to make that earlier. But here we do this earlier. We don't do it after Purim, we do it before. We push it earlier. So part of the reason, proof being that it's the lowest level fasting, but what I think part of the lesson of what is that the Tanit Esther that is based on this pasul is where she finds her voice. Also a lesson to us that right now, because what was happening in the story, okay, the edict goes out, the Jews are all going to get killed. So you can all draw your own conclusions of what you want to do with your own voices. Okay. There's a very different reading of this particular statement from outside the Guf to tell me Tov El Shtika. The concept of silence is the best thing. There's the Tiferet Yisrael is a commentary on Pirke Avot, on Mishne, but especially Pirke Avot, and he says as follows: Lo matzati shedavar tov kolshu yotze min hashtika. I'll explain that in English in a second. Let's take a look at the words again. He says, V'lo matzati laguf tov ela shtika. Right? He said, I found nothing better for the body rather than just silence. Now, yes, what the Tiferet Yisrael says, and I'll explain in English in a second, doesn't fit with the exact wording of this Mishnah. But his perspective says as follows: I have not found any good that comes out of being silent. He's a very different perspective. So but if you just take that on face value, like that doesn't make any sense at all, right? So he clarifies. This is Rabbi Shimon. This is Shimon, right? He is at the early stages of his career. He is yet to become the great rabbi. So he's among either at this stage or he's just become into his own, and he has students. And he's speaking, according to the Tiferet Yisrael, to his students. And he's saying to them that on your initial path, don't be afraid to speak up. I don't understand. Talk, speak up. Meaning, like we'll see in another Mishnah, lo habayshan lo meid. A person who's embarrassed will never learn. Right? There's a Mishnah that says lo habayshan lo meid. A person who's embarrassed will not learn. Lo hakaptan melamed. And a person who's strict should not be a teacher. Good luck with that. So his point being that when you are trying to learn Torah, when you're trying to grow, and you're not sure what's happening, you don't understand the meaning of something, you should speak up. So he says that I never found anything good comes out of being quiet when it comes to Torah. Doesn't mean just in life. He's not disagreeing with Shimon. Okay. Um, Tov. And then the final statement in that Mishnah, or second statement, right? Yeah, second one is V'lo hamidrash hu ha'ikar ela ma'aseh. It's not the midrash. It's not the. How does it translate in English? It's not the learning, but the study. Study. Okay. So it's not the study of the Torah. That's the main thing. Expounding on good. That's the important thing. It's the action. Okay. What does that mean? Obviously, we say Talmud Torah keneged kulam. That learning Torah is equal to all mitzvot, which in Tanya we saw a very interesting discussion about that. So I go home and I get myself a set of Mishnah Berurah, nice Shulchan Aruch with the commentary of Mishnah Berurah, very nice. And I sit day and night. And I learn about halachot of Hanukkah and Shabbat and Purim and what a lulav is. And now that I know the stuff better than the Shulchan Aruch knew it himself. But I don't do anything with it, right? Did I do a mitzvah? Of course I did a mitzvah. I did a mitzvah of Talmud Torah. I learned Torah. But what does Hashem give us the Torah for? He didn't give it to us as a mental exercise. It was to put into practice, right? So what the difference is that you have somebody who can be an academic. Let's go out of the Torah world for a second. Someone an academic and can know the sciences, can know tremendously all the sciences, and can be just a bucky and just tremendous guddle in science. But when he has to put it to practice in something, may not be able to do something. I'll give you an example, a real world example. There are many, many situations I've been aware of where a couple gets married and the guy asks his Rosh Hashiva to be the Masada Kedushin. Man's been learning and teaching for 40 years. And they call me up. I've had this. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be Masada Kedushin. Everyone's Masada Kedushin. Walk me through it. That's not a bad thing, but it's showing that you can learn and teach, but until you do the Masi, until you actually do, it makes a big difference. I had one who, I think I mentioned maybe that, not the name. This is while he was before the chuppah, at the chassid's tish and under the chuppah, he's messaging me, do it like this or like that. So I said, yeah, he was very discreet about it, which is good. But, and it's not a bad thing, but his point here in the Mishne is, it's good, you need to learn, but you also have to do. And what's even worse is when you do the opposite. Not the opposite. When you preach and you don't do, right? If I were to tell you, if I was giving you a class in Lashon Hara, which I wouldn't do, but I would give you a class in Lashon Hara, and then after class we sit outside and talk Lashon Hara for 20 minutes, that's not so good. I'm demonstrating you what not to do. See, very, very good. He done the kasachut. Very good. You learned something. Yeah, fair. It's about time. So I'm going to read you a midrash that talks about this particular phrase, Lo ha-midrash ha'ikar. Tachlita b'riyah, the purpose of creation, eina chochmatenu, is not our wisdom. That's not the goal that God created us, that we should have this wisdom, ela ofen kiyum ha-mitzvah b'ma'aseh, but rather the putting into practice the mitzvot you learn about. Now we know that there are people who are perpetual students. They're doctorate, they're postdoc, and the second they get a third degree and a fourth degree. That's good. That's fine. That's what. But if they want to do something with it, they really want to be a professor or they want to be a teacher. That you get, there's a point where you have to stop and you have to actually do. Continuing, Chazal, Gadol Talmud Torah shemevi lidei maaseh. It's a famous phrase. It says that learning Torah is great because it brings you to action, it brings you to the action of what you need to do. This is one of the concepts we talk about, this Atzilut and Bria, and all these different levels of worlds of existence, all the way from Atzilut, which is the level of God, so to speak, whatever this all means, all the way down to this world, which is called Olam HaAsiyah, the world of doing. This is not the world of just, the world of Chashiva, just we're all going to walk around and think Torah thoughts. Okay, you can walk around thinking Torah thoughts, but Tachlis, get up and do. And because of that, we see the last line of the Mishnah, and it says as follows. Maybe if you, when I first translated it, I said it says you talk too much, you bring around sin. It says that's kind of amorphous. What exactly does that even mean? So if we connect it to the prior line, it's saying that if you just talk and talk and talk, I really do need to daven. I really do need to put on tefillin. I really should light the Hanukkah candles. I really should. Do stop talking. Unfortunately, you find people, speakers. We've all heard speakers like this. They get up and you're excited, you hear some good talk, and like he speaks like 40 or she 40, 45 minutes, an hour, and like in the last 5 minutes they make a point. Like until all that, there's like I'm waiting. Like, and what happens is you lose your audience, you lose the people you're trying to tell a message to, and you did, and by the time you get to the message, it's gone. So from the flip side is that we're, so to speak, speaking to Hashem, right? And God's going, okay, what's your point? Remember this book I gave you? It's right? Just, maybe you want to actually do something now, like you've been talking about for an hour.
Yeah. When you go to hear a speaker, he says never. I would say rarely.
Yeah.
Go and say, gosh, I wish that guy was more.
Very rarely, but there are times I've actually had that situation. Yeah, I've actually had that. The truth is, I heard just heard him last week. I didn't remember his name. Great. Anyways, I just heard someone last week speak. He only spoke like 25, 30 minutes. And I really would have liked to have gone on more. But you're right, very rare. Right. There's another famous line that says, no one lies on their deathbed. So if I only spend more time in the office, right? Right. Okay. So then that also could be another twist on this prior statement at the beginning of the Mishnah. Lo matzati laguf tov ela shtika. I didn't find something good for the body rather than silence, meaning stop talking, do, right? Use your body, do the mitzvah. It's another way to look at that particular Mishnah. Okay, let's take a look. Let's take at least to read and introduce the next Mishnah. Last one of the parak, Mishnah Yudchet. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. This is not the same Rabban Shimon as the prior Mishnah. This is his grandson, known as Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. By the way, why doesn't it say, I forgot to mention this, in this Mishnah and in the prior Mishnah, why doesn't it say Kibel? Why does it say, okay, this is the end of the Zugot. Remember, the Zugot stopped. There's Shamayim Hillel, Shamayim Avtalyon. Why doesn't it also say Kibel? Because we're talking here parent, child, grandchild. And because it would have been assumed as by way course of life that parents were responsible to teach their children, that they did Kibel, did receive from their father and their grandfather. Okay. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Al Shlosha Dvarim Ha'olam Omed. The world stands on three things: Al Adin, on judgment, law; Al Ha'emet, truth; V'al Shalom, and peace. Shenemar Emet u'Mishpat Shalom Shiftu b'Sha'arechem. If you put your finger there for a second, turn back to the beginning of Pirke Avot, Mishnah Bet. It says Shimon HaTzadik. Tachana haba. Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik haya misharei Knesset HaGdolah. Shimon HaTzadik was the last remnant of the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, the men of the Great Assembly. Hu haya omer, he used to say, Al Shosha Dvarim Ha'olam Hamed, the world stands on three things: Al Torah v'Avodah v'Gemilut Chasadim. It's like, wait, we've seen this movie already, right? So first of all, there are two different versions of this one word. Both in printing from Rav Kahati, both Mishnayot say Omed. The world stands on these three things, and each give their opinion of what they are. And other versions, I'm sure if you look around yours, you're going to have different versions. One says Omed and one says Kayam. That the one by the Shimon HaTzadik says that the three things upon the world exist.
It says endures.
Endures. What does it say in the Hebrew? Does it say Kayam? Kayam. Okay. And in our Mishnah, as far as I know, everyone says it should say Omed. So we have to understand they have different things, right? So he says, Shimon HaTzadik said, Torah, Avodah, Gemilut Chasadim, and we discussed all three of those at the time. The difference between that Mishnah and our current Mishnah is that we're talking in the first one by Shimon HaTzadik of the world, existence. If the world didn't have someone learning Torah in it every minute of the day, the world wouldn't exist. Because the world exists for Torah. So there's always someone learning. There's a guy who comes, I would say religiously, whatever. Guy comes religiously to Mishkan Shoshana where I daven in the morning. Comes at least once every 4 or 5 months. Is there today. and he has a kollel. He came by you too. He has a kollel where it's called kollel ashmoret haboker or something like that, but they learn all night. They're learning all through the night. Not through the day. They're like they do a mishmeret at night, a shift. And he's collecting for it. Well, let's say everyone in Israel is asleep. Well, there are people, other places, other countries in the world, people are learning. There's always someone learning somewhere in the world. Without it, the world would exist. So the Mishnah that Rabbi Shimon, that Shimon HaTzadik tells us that three things upon world exists means without them the world would stop, wouldn't exist anymore. But in our Mishnah, and I'm not going to get into depth today, I'm just going to introduce it. He's telling us that the following three things are that society would fall apart. There'd be a complete breakdown in society. One of the mitzvot, the Sheva mitzvot b'nei Noach, one of the 7 Noachide laws, if you're not aware, is the establishing of a judicial system, a court system. That is one of the of the 7 Noachide laws. Why? Because without a judicial system, again, you could have don't steal and don't kill and all that business, but what happens when you do? What happens when people steal? What happens when there's a damage to somebody? So it's a breakdown in society. So again, Shimon HaTzadik in Mishnah Bet is talking about the world existing, and here in Shimon HaGamliel is talking about the existence or the society or chevra. So Bezrat Hashem, what's next week? Next week's just a regular Thursday, yes, I think. Okay, so we'll continue Bezrat Hashem for now. Right. And Bezrat Hashem, we will see on Sunday or Monday whether it's going to be Purim or Shushan Purim. Sinwar will get killed. Bezrat Hashem. That's my prediction. You can. That's Sinwar. Yachia Sinwar Yemach Shemo B'Zichro. It'll be his last day on earth. Hopefully, I mean, I don't mind if it be earlier. So he's seen Makdim to do mitzvot, but that's my hope and prayer. What's that? Home springs eternal. That's right. All right. Have a good day, everybody.